listening to ProveText, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Fredrick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello, welcome to ProveText. I am Michael Halcomb. I'm here with Dr. Fredrick J. Long, who is donning his very thick Christmas sweater, Advent sweater there. So you look very warm in that sweater.
I am toasty roasty. This sweater is always so warm. Yeah. And you got your hoodie on.
Yeah. Is that?
And what's your hat about? I'm kind of stuck in your hat. Dark horse. Do you even drink coffee?
I don't, but when we were on the island of Kauai a couple months ago, the sun was blazing hot. It was like, and I didn't have a hat. So I popped into this coffee shop and got this hat.
Are you balding? I can't.
No, I'm not.
No, you're getting nice head of hair.
I had just gotten a haircut, so my head was shaved, around the sides.
Okay.
And
man, I got to watch it. Man. I got to wear a hat. I mean, sometimes I'll stand there like this because I can just feel my noggin burning. It's terrible. Yeah. And now I grew this big, thick beard, and I can't help playing with it. I'm sitting here kind of curling it and braiding it.
Transfer some of that up to the top, man.
I know. I'm trying to compensate, I guess, with my beard up here.
Isn't that crazy how that works? That the hair can be so thin up here, but so bushel down here.
Yeah, my dad grew a really nice beard. He won the beard contest one year for Christmas, and
oh wow, nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are taking a little break from Galatians, and we're discussing some Advent-oriented passages. So in the previous episode, we talked about Matthew 2, 1-4. We're going to keep looking at Matthew 2, which tells us part of that Christmas story. And if you're watching, I'm going to go to stepbible.org and put the verses up on the screen. If you're just listening, that's fine too. We'll be reading them out loud. We're going to pick up at Matthew 2:5, and I'm going to read the Greek, and it goes this way. Judaipan avtu, in Bethlehem, tes Judeas, utos gar yegrapte diatu prophetu. We'll stop there, and just, I don't have anything to say in the way of pronunciation here.
Yeah, we're covering twice as many verses and even just a little shorter time. So we're going to be very efficient here in our explanations, and maybe this will give you some nuggets to ponder devotionally, maybe for your sermon prep. So verse 5, the de marks the next step in the unfolding scene, the distinctive development. The u is with the de marks a switch in who's speaking. So you have on stage right now, you have Herod, who's gathered together chief priests, all the chief priests, and then the scribes of the people. So Herod was speaking in verse 4. Now they're going to speak back. So he's asked them a question, where is the Christ being born? And they said to him, in Bethlehem. So here's a direct quote, in Bethlehem of Judea. For thus, utos, in this way or in this manner, supporting that claim, it has been written, gegrapte, through the prophet. And then they quote that prophet in verse 6. So gegrapte is a perfect middle passive indicative from grapho, to write. Gegrapta is a scripture citation introduction formula. So whenever you see this, you're usually looking at some recognized authority, particularly scripture, is being quoted from. It has been written. And remember, the significance of the perfect tense is that something's happened in the past with ongoing results up to and including the present time. So this is a prophecy. This is something that's been spoken through the prophet that now has bearing today when they're answering. And notice that this was spoken through the prophet, dia tu prophetu, dia with the genitive tends to construe intermediate agency, not direct agency, but intermediate agency. So when I see this happening, it makes me think of, well, who is the direct agent here? I mean, so the prophet is the mouthpiece, but who is the direct speaker? Well, the direct speaker is God. God speaking through the prophet Micah, and so they're quoting from Micah verse 5, chapter 5 verse 2 in the next verse that follows. Yeah, verse 6.
What is the name for that? Where it's like a divine genitive or something like? What is the name for that? I'm slipping
Oh,
my mind.
a divine passive. That's
Divine
not.
passive. Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's not quite in play
Hmm.
here, but it's at least a
Huh.
little bit analogous. When
Okay.
something is described as having occurred, but it's in the passive voice and there's no specified subject, but it can be implied from the context that God is the one speaking or acting or doing.
Maybe I just made one up. The divine genitive. Um. Anyway. Oh,
Sure.
the pronunciation issue here, though. Remember that
Yeah,
when you have when you have a gamma
yeah,
followed in the environment of being followed by an epsilon, it becomes a yeah.
yeah,
So this is yeah,
yeah.
and then it was funny because you were when you were saying as in when you were reading this gegrapte, you were putting the stress on the alpha.
Yeah,
And I think that's what most
yeah,
native English speakers would do.
yeah.
And
That's
so
what I do.
the
Yeah,
stress here is yegra.
Yegrata. So my Erasmian was betraying me, as was my English training.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for the
Oh,
correction.
well, Erasmi and English were on the same essentially. um, so yeah, it'd be interesting just to spend a few minutes maybe talking about what we mean by prophecy here. I wonder how far apart or how close you and I are on our views of prophecy. But we also have a book, a dissertation in the Glossa House series that looks at um,
Plero,
yeah, that yeah,
the climax of
exactly.
Christ.
Yeah, so that'll be fulfilled.
Hmm.
This idea of prophecy being fulfilled and
Hmm.
what what is going on. So the way that when I talk about prophecy, I don't tend to mean like this whole prediction fulfill model. And I think the book is arguing that largely. Um, who's the author of that book? Do you remember? It's slipping my mind.
Yeah, I'll look it up. Jared August.
Maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think he's arguing something kind of similar to that, but this idea that prophecy doesn't have to do with predict, fulfill, um, but rather, so it's not a fulfilling, but you can flip that on its head and talk about a filling full. And so I've often sort of explained it this way that, Matthew is telling this story of Jesus. It's almost like he's at a loss for words. And so because he's at a loss for words, he has to reach back into like Israel's history and borrow words, as it were. And he's taking those charged words from Israel's history and now dropping them into the story of Jesus and framing the story of Jesus that
Mm,
way. And in that way, filling it full of historical meaning that otherwise, if he hadn't borrowed that language, it wouldn't have had. So it's a filling full rather than a fulfilling, right? In terms of predict, fulfill. Um, so I think that's important to think. I mean, think of Martin Luther King Jr. When he was giving his "I Have a Dream" speech, and he did that whole bit where I think he's quoting, was it Jeremiah or Isaiah? I can't remember exactly who, but he says, "Let justice roll down like the rivers." And in that moment, he didn't have to cite the Old Testament. He didn't have to cite one of the prophets. But by doing that, he was reaching back into a whole history and bringing that history forward and reframing that moment in American history, like and charging it with a whole history that preceded, and in
mm,
that way filled that meaning fuller with, or filled that moment fuller with meaning than had he not drawn on that, he wouldn't have. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. And to be fair to Jared August, I think he does take it as a cumulative.
Okay.
I think that's the translation he favors, if I remember correctly. So that kind of sense, bringing it to its fullness in terms of significance.
Yeah.
I don't know if that aligns with what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to say this whole idea, like we've been evangelicals and Protestants in particular have been stuck in this predict fulfill model.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think there are other ways of faithfully reading the
Oh
text
yeah.
that doesn't treat it like magic,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
in fact are more responsible ways of reading it. So
Yeah. I tend to appreciate a typological reading or analogical, that things are happening that repeat, and greater significance and meaning comes when you start to see them in relation to each other. And so let's keep reading so we can see what that looks like here. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not predictive elements. It's just that it's more than just simply predictive, and it's not always predictive. Sometimes it's
yeah.
typological, but there are patterns that we need to attend to. And here, I think in verse 6, there's a really important pattern that is stressed. So why don't you read verse 6, and let's
All
talk about
right,
that.
you're cracking me up here. Um, Keshu Bethlehem Yehuda, Udamos elachiste, ientus eyemosin. That's an interesting word there. Yuda, exugar, exelevsete, egumenos, ostis humaniton laonmu, ton Israel. Just this really quick, this a ye mo sin. Mosin. Remember, a gamma in the environment of being followed by an epsilon becomes a y. So a mosin. Stress on the mo. A mosin.
Mm-hmm. Yuda.
Yuda.
Yeah,
The.
Yuda.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We
So,
don't
and
have a hard D sound in Koine
Yuda.
unless it's a nu followed by a tav.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, and then we get an und. So that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We never have just a standalone like Yuda,
Mm-hmm.
Yuda,
Mm-hmm.
Udamo,
Yeah.
Udamos.
Yeah. So here we have the direct quote, and you, Bethlehem. So Bethlehem is treated like an entity to be addressed. You are least among the leaders of Judah. And then we have a couple words which are not strictly found in the Hebrew text of Micah 5:2. And you need to always think about that. Like, why are words added to the citation? Why are things omitted from the citation? So, so here, land of Judah is not in Micah, at least not the version that we have in the Hebrew text. So you might want to do a little bit of looking around. So there's some extra stress on Judah. So notice that we have in verse 5, in Bethlehem of Judea, then we have the land of Judah, then we have leaders of Judah. So there's a lot of stress on Judah, and we need to ask why. What's happening in Judah, or why is Judah so important? And probably it's because of the prophecies, understanding of the king of Judah. The Messiah would come from the stump of Jesse and come out of the tribe of Judah. So that's probably what's happening, why that's being stressed. And then the word udamos is also added. That was not a part of the Micah translation from Hebrew. So by no means least. And so this is stressing the leastness, potential understanding. So Bethlehem is a small, seemingly insignificant place, but from that small, seemingly insignificant place, God is going to do something wonderful. He's going to bring forth. So, for from you, second part of verse 6, will come forth a leader. A leader will come forth who will shepherd my people, namely Israel. Yeah, will shepherd. So there's a lot packed in here. The word used for ruler here, egamon, egamon is really political. I mean, every word for ruler is political, but this one in particular, to be in a preeminent position, to be a ruler, a guide, it construes a little bit more guidance. And this guidance is particularly seen in being a shepherd. So here we have a metaphor that the ruler of God's people will be like a shepherd. So this recalls passages from the prophets, particularly Ezekiel, that talks about the good shepherd and versus the bad shepherd. You know, the good shepherd takes care of his sheep. The bad shepherd devours their sheep and doesn't take care of them, and this kind of thing. Yeah. So,
And,
yeah, stressing
well,
Judah and shepherding.
yeah, you also have Bethlehem also being mentioned in verse 6 and verse 5. Obviously, it's connected
Mhm.
to where he was born, but
Yeah.
and then in verse 1, this whole idea of like Beit Lechem, right, in Hebrew, house of bread. So you have these, I don't know, you have with Bethlehem, you have house of bread. With Jerusalem, they will see peace, or they will see wholeness. You have all these place names, I think, are conveying different things.
Yeah.
Israel, Judah. So I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I'm going to be preaching on this during Advent. One of the things I really want to do is I want to track the names and see what's going on with all the names here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Bethlehem is it's framing this whole narrative in Bethlehem of Judea. So something's going on there with Judea for sure. Yeah, and that Bethlehem being in Judea. Yeah. How about verse
Yeah.
7?
Let me say too. You I know you want me to be more succinct, but the personification sort of Bethlehem, or however that's going, it is interesting to see that you also have Bethlehem then being shepherded. Uh, who will shepherd? Well, I guess Bethlehem isn't being shepherded,
The people, the leos.
but the people.
Yeah, my
Israel.
people. So God's people, and then God's people described as Israel.
Oh, that's interesting. This ton laonmu, because that throws me right back to verse 4, grammatis tu lau,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
the scribes of the people versus
Yeah.
my people Israel.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
Great observation, because what's going to happen is that Jesus is presented as a teacher of the people, really an alternative grammatis.
Grammates.
Yeah, grammateus. Yeah, so Jesus is Moses-like, and at issue is, who are the people going to follow? Are they going to follow their scribes, or are they going to follow their king, their leader, who's shepherding them? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's. You feel good stopping there, and then next time talk about 2, 7, and 8.
I thought we are going to do 2, 7, and 8 now, and then because we wanted to get through verse 12, right?
All right, we'll try it. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Tote erodes latra, kalesas tus magus, ekrivosen parafton ton chronon, tu fenomeno, asteros. Ooh, I love that. Fenomeno.
Yeah. So then, so tota is like a next temporal step in the argument. So tote has a similar kind of function as de, but adding a temporal construal to it. So then Herod, in secret, lathra, is an adverb, adverbial kind of sense. It is an adverb meaning in secret. Having called the magi, asked them or actually determined precisely, akribo, to ascertain exactly. Luke begins his gospel by talking about the need for accuracy, using a cognate of this verb, using the adverb akrobos. So this is like an accurate kind of determination. So he called them in secret, determining from them what ton chronon tu phanemu menu asteros, of the appearing star. So phanome, phano. This is a middle passive present participle functioning as an adjective. So it's interesting to see it. Like he could have just said the star, the time of the star, but really it's the time of the manifesting star. And this goes back to what we talked about stars being related to the manifestation of rulers. And this word is related to like epiphanos, apophan, which is manifest and used in titles of kings. So Antiochus Epiphanes, it's Epiphanes is a related form to this star being shining. So it construes this as a particularly political, portentous star that appeared. So he's trying to ascertain exactly when did this star appear, yeah, we're going to find out why he wants to know exactly. Well, we know he's going to try to kill all the infants that fall within that time frame. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too. Like we heard about them. We haven't heard about these magi for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how Herod heard about them. Did they go to Herod? Did someone report them to Herod? Like,
yeah,
we don't know how Herod came in contact with them.
He heard, though, verse 3, and having heard. So verse 3, he heard about them. So they came into Jerusalem, mouth open, legontes, verse 2. Hey, where is this? And then verse 3, it said Herod was troubled, having heard this. So the report got to him.
So is it that he heard about them, or he heard what they said, or both?
Well, since they're asking where is the Christ to be born, and then they want to know where is the Christ to be born. That's what he asked then the scribes, calling them together, verse 3 and 4. So verse 4 particularly, he called them asking where is the Christ to be born.
So he's disturbed at he's disturbed at what he's heard about the Magi asking. Of course, not just the Magi being there. So he somehow has heard what these Magi have been asking, whether it's through the grapevine or they came to him directly. He's heard what they're asking, and that's disturbed him.
Yeah, and then he asked the same question.
Yes.
Where? Yeah.
Okay. And verse 8, que pimsas avtusis Bethlehem, eben, poreftendes, there's that new tav, that and, poreftendes, exetasate, akrivos peritu pediu, epande evrete, apangilate, apangilatemiu, opos kago elthon, proskyneso avto. Yeah, some interesting stuff. We do have the what do you call it when it throws the accent back? The
enclitic?
Yeah, the enclitic. Thank you. So that's doing that there. You're going to pronounce those as if they're one word. Apangilatemu. Notice we have a double gamma followed by. So here we have a gamma in the environment epsilon being followed, or really an epsilon iota. So you would think it would be yilate. Whoops. But in the case where it's a double gamma followed by an epsilon or an epsilon iota, it doesn't. It's ng. So apangilate, right?
Angilate.
Apangilate.
Yeah.
So that's a little tricky for people to get. But remember, in the instance of a double gamma being followed by an epsilon or an epsilon iota, it just retains the ng. Yep.
Yep. All right. So translating verse 8, and after having sent them to Bethlehem, he said, see, that doesn't quite make sense, after sending them. So pempsas is an aorist participle, and people will say, well, they're always time prior, but this isn't time prior. This is the framework for what he is going to say. So,
Why can't it be time prior? And after
well, because he hasn't sent them yet. He can't send them and then say to them, as they're walking away, hey, by the way. So it's not a strict temporal sequence. It's providing a
I see
framework.
what you're saying. So after, it's more like after issuing the command to be sent. That's how I read it. I don't read it like literally after he sent them he yelled.
Well, no, I'm being ridiculous to make the point, but people will say that this aorist participle before the main verb means time prior, and it doesn't.
I tend to lean that way, but I get what you're saying. But
Yeah.
I think here Pimpsas here has the idea of the command of being sent. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, in my understanding, it's a framework. While he's, in the context of him sending them to Bethlehem, he said,
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
procedural, this is procedural, going, seek out accurately about the child. So a lot of times they'll separate those out, but the main verb here is seek out. Seek out, search carefully. Going is a requisite action to be able to do that.
Right.
So it's emphasizing really the sequencing of sending and going. So seek out accurately about the child. Moreover, whenever you find this information assumed, whenever you find this, report to me. Report to me in order that I also, Kago, going, again, procedural, I'll prostrate and give homage to him. Liar. He's a liar. In such a way that I will bow down to him. So basically he's lying. Yeah. He's an example of someone who's self-deceived about thinking himself to be important. We were just reading in Galatians earlier. Yeah, so interesting. He's using them. He's trying to instrumentalize the Magi to his own bidding. And we're going to see that they're going to outwit him, actually, because they're not going to do it. But he certainly is acting like he's in charge. He's a leader. He's the kind of leader that the Messiah is not, the Christ is not going to be. He's the kind of shepherd that devours his sheep. Jesus is not going to do that. So he's going to be ruthless, and Herod was quite ruthless, very ruthless to his own children. The contrast is very obvious there. So a little purpose construction there at the end, the opos, kago, stressing his agency. I also, you're going to go you want to go worship him. I want to go worship him. We're on the same team here. So tell me when you find out accurately about this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have where's Bethlehem mentioned again? So featuring very prominently here.
Yeah.
Well, let's stop there, Fred. You got a parting shot here?
Yeah. For prayer is nothing else than being on terms of friendship with God. Teresa of Avila.
It's a good quote. Not sure I agree fully with it, but I get the sentiment. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. All right. I just did a recent episode for the podcast. It was a fallacy of the week episode debunking this idea that it says prayer is leadership, which is a weird way to. Prayer is leadership, an act of leadership that authorizes God to act in our world. I'm like, there's so many things wrong with that. Anyways, if you missed that, go back and watch the episode. So it's a terrible definition of prayer. But hey, thanks for watching, Fred. Thanks for the insights. We hope you're having a happy Advent if you're watching or listening during this time, and heading into a happy Christmas season. We're gonna stop there. We'll say I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.